A sick millionaire asked the nurse to pretend to be his daughter for a day. Hours later, he was completely stunned when his wife came into the room with a lawyer and the will. Mary was sitting at her small kitchen table, surrounded by bills and job ads. She sighed deeply, feeling the weight of loneliness and responsibility. She was a young nurse of 28 years old who had an aura of determination that did not match her physical fragility. Her light brown hair and green eyes revealed an attentive and careful personality. She was raised in an orphanage, completely alone, without any family. Mary depended entirely on herself, running her fingers through the ads. A few days ago, she had started to feel dizzy, and his body seemed increasingly fragile. With no money for her medical treatment, she needed to find a job quickly. As if his prayers had finally been answered, her phone rang. The device indicated that it was an unknown number. Mary answered, moved by hope that it could be a response to the countless resumes he had sent. On the other end of the line, a feminine and authoritative voice answered. "Good afternoon. My name is Helena. I am looking for a nurse to take care of my husband. Your name was recommended to us." It had been a long time since she had gotten positions as a nurse, accepting any job she could find. "I don't remember applying for this vacancy. However, I'm very interested in working as a caregiver," she argued, trying not to sound as desperate as she felt inside. "It was my husband, Mr. Alex, who heard about your services. We urgently need someone with your experience," Helena explained, interrupting Mary. "Could you come to the mansion today for an interview?" Not believing her luck, Mary quickly accepted. "Yes, of course. I'll be there." Upon arriving at the imposing Alex mansion, Mary was greeted by Helena, a woman with a rigid posture and calculating expression. During the interview, the woman did not appear to have genuine concern for her husband's health. "Mr. Alex was diagnosed with a rare disease. Doctors say he has only a few months to live. I think those medical professionals are exaggerating. It's not that worrying." Mary felt a pang of compassion for the man, but she didn't like the way he branded her. Helena spoke about her husband almost as if his life did not matter. "I'm so sorry to hear that. I would like to meet Mr. Alex, if possible," he said, fearing that the wife might hurt the man due to the harshness of his words. Maybe she's not so bad, Mary thought, hoping it was true. Before they could continue, a man in gardening clothes entered the room by mistake, interrupting the conversation. Seeing the man, Helena, he reacted with obvious disdain. "Don't you have eyes? Get out of here immediately." The gardener looked embarrassed and his shoulders slumped at the rebuke. "Excuse me, Helena, this will not happen again," she said, noticing Mary's worried look. She felt uncomfortable with the situation and looked at the man with pity. But she remained focused on his goal of seeing Mr. Alex's situation, fearing that the woman would mistreat him and no one would know. "Please, I think it is important to see Mr. Alex before anything." Taken to Mr. Alex's room, Mary barely had time to introduce herself when she noticed that something was wrong. They found the patient in bed coughing violently, struggling for air. I had the completely white face, struggling to breathe. Mary ran towards him, adjusting her position to make breathing easier and gently patting him on the back. "He's not breathing," she murmured, taking the initiative in the situation. Carefully, Mary turned him a little more, fearing that he would lose his life. He began to give him a cardiac massage until the man was breathing again, panting. Mary was grateful for having arrived on time and breathed a sigh of relief for having entered the room before the worst happened. "It's okay now?" Mary asked worriedly after the crisis had passed. Mr. Alex, still panting, managed to smile weakly in gratitude. You have angel hands, thank you," he responded with a weak voice. The man had a pale face and looked too thin, almost as if he wasn't being cared for perfectly. "I'm fine now," he whispered. His green eyes seemed to pay attention to everything about Mary, excited to have had her life saved. "He's so thin. Could it be that they are not feeding him well?" she thought, feeling bad for thinking so badly of the man's wife. "I'm glad you're okay, Mr. Alex," she responded, giving him a smile. Helena, watching the scene from the door, felt visibly uncomfortable. "Looks like you did something good, Mary," she argued. However, her voice sounded like she wanted the worst to happen to her husband. "However, I think I can take care of my husband alone." "He's getting better. It was just an accident," he argued, dismissing Mary. "I want her to be my nurse. I still have a voice in this house," Mr. Alex boasted, livid at his wife's attitude. "Mary, I want you to accept the job. You saved my life." Mary, although relieved to have helped, felt the weight of the situation. "I will do the best I can for Mr. Alex," she responded, looking at the man's wife. "If you don't mind, I would like to have a full-time position due to the state of my health. If there is any room, even a small place where I can stay to take care of him. Even this chair is enough for me," she argued, worried about both the respiratory arrest and the man's wife. "Stay as long as you want," the grateful man argued, looking at her once more before turning to his wife. "Helena, put her in our best guest room. It's the least I can do to thank her for what she did," he ordered. Weeks later, Mary had already gotten used to her routine with Mr. Alex. However, with each passing day, she felt weaker and sicker. "I have to get more money to go to the doctor, maybe if I find some work on my days off," he thought. But he could never get away from Mr. Alex because he feared that he would get worse in his absence. "I'll take care of myself as soon as he gets better," he decided. As he advanced through the corridors of the extensive and imposing mansion, carrying with him a tray with vital medications for the patient and the papers with medical instructions. He followed the instructions to the letter. However, Mr. Alex seemed to get worse with each day, as did Mary. "He needs me," she muttered to herself as she struggled up the stairs. Entering the magnate's spacious room, she found him ending a call, his voice as fragile as the blowing wind. As soon as he hung up the phone, he fixed his green eyes on her, a gleam of urgency emerging amidst his weakness. The call seemed important because the man's eyes were very concerned. Mary began to speak as soon as she ended the call, her voice barely breaking the silence. This could be my last day." The gravity in his words hung in the air, a harbinger of farewell. Mary quickly approached him, placing the medicine tray next to the bed while absorbing the weight of that moment. Mr. Alex then, with visible effort, said, "There is something very important that I need you to do." He paused, as if each breath were a precious commodity. Before Mary could ask what she needed, her eyes wandered to the tray next to the bed, noticing the presence of a bottle not listed among the usual medications, along with 2 envelopes that she assumed were of extreme importance. He knew all the documents and medications. "I knew that wasn't there the day before. Helena used to leave all the prescriptions that the doctors prescribed to treat Alex, and Mary knew all the papers by heart." "Do you know what is it?" Curiosa asked, since she did not remember any changes in the man's medications. Mr. Alex, following her gaze, hurried to respond. "This medicine and these documents play a crucial role in what is to come." He would ask a trusted friend to place them on the tray, Alex said in a weak voice. The nurse, moved by a mixture of confusion and determination, found herself faced with a dilemma. "Because? Is there anything I can help with, Mr. Alex?" he asked, her voice filled with a silent promise of loyalty. "Your health and happiness are all that matters to me." Since she was in the mansion, Mary felt increasingly closer to the man, despite being able to talk little with him due to the amount of medications he took as they left him weak. She felt grateful for having gotten the job, and above all, for his kindness. Mr. Alex tried to extend his hand toward her, a gesture of gratitude and desperation, but weakness overcame him, leaving the movement unfinished. "Mary, you have already brought light to my dark days, but there is something you can do for me." "One last favor," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "Pretend to be my daughter. I don't want to leave without—" He stopped talking, coughing again, leaving Mary worried. "Please, I need you to pretend I'm your father for a day. This is very important to me," he continued with a tense look. "Why are you asking me this, Mr. Alex?" she asked without fully understanding the request. "You're going to be fine. I have faith that you'll get better," he argued, praying that he was right. "Mary, this is my last request. I don't have any more time," Mr. Alex said with a weak voice. Then the man began coughing violently again. In an automatic gesture, Mary approached the man to take care of him. "I'll pretend, Mr. Alex, Dad." He joked, even though his heart was broken by the request. "He has no one but me," she thought, feeling closer to the man than she would like. Before Alex could further explain the reason for the request or about the new medications, the door was abruptly opened. Helena, Mr. Alex's wife, entered the room with determined steps. Behind her, there was an extremely well-dressed man, wearing a well-cut suit. "It's time, Alex," Helena said, her sharp voice interrupting any intimacy that the previous moment harbored. "I need you to sign the will." "I brought a lawyer to certify everything," he argued abruptly. Mary felt the space contract with tension. She stepped back, casting one last look full of questions at Mr. Alex. "Was this why you asked me to pretend to be your daughter, so that you wouldn't have to sign these documents?" he thought. But before he could ask, Mr. Alex coughed even harder again, his breathing becoming labored. Helena, with the coldness of someone playing a long, calculated game, turned her attention to Mr. Alex, whose condition was deteriorating before her eyes. "Alex, you need to sign these papers now. It's crucial," he insisted, pushing the will towards him, the documents trembling slightly in his firm hands. Mr. Alex, gathering what was left of his strength, tried to raise his hand toward the document, but his consciousness began to fail, his eyes struggling to stay open. "Helena," he murmured, before his hand fell limply, and his head tilted to the side, losing consciousness. Mary ran to grab the resuscitation device in case she needed it, her nursing training taking over. "He's going into shock," she shouted, turning to Helena with a look that mixed pleading and accusation. "This can wait. I need to help him now." But the damage was done. Helena's choices had pushed Mr. Alex past a breaking point, and Mary found herself in the painful position of witnessing the consequences of those actions. As she struggled to stabilize Mr. Alex's condition, one thought kept repeating in his mind. "I need to save him." Seeing the nurse's determination to save Alex, Helena pushed Mary's hands away from her husband, causing the resuscitation device to fall to the ground and break. "Leave the room now. You left him in this state." "He was fine before I arrived." Despite Helena's stern demands for her to leave the room, a greater force guided Mary's actions, anchored in faith and the desperation of trying to save Mr. Alex from a rapidly approaching end. "No, I need to do this." Mary spoke more to herself, but loud enough for Helena to hear. The determination in her voice was unwavering, even in the face of the emotional storm that Helena represented. "He's dying," he thought, but he couldn't let the man go like that. With trembling hands, Mary reached for the unscheduled medication, a decision made at the peak of desperation. "Mr. Alex, please stay with me," she implored softly, hoping that somehow her words would reach him, offering a beacon of hope in the twilight of his consciousness. Helena watched, incredulous, the nurse's audacity. "What do you think you're doing?" "Take your hands off my husband now," she said, although loaded with authority, her voice trembled with a hint of fear. Mary, focused on her task, barely registered Helena's words, her attention completely focused on Mr. Alex's fragile thread of life. He was the owner of a large pharmaceutical institution. He should have asked for the medicine to be brought in so they could have a chance at life. Despite the fear of what he did at the peak of the disaster, I waited to save the man. Mary knew that applying that injection could be the only way to save him, since his heart was almost stopping. That's exactly what he did. The administration of the medication was a moment suspended in time where each second seemed to stretch on infinitely. Mary watched Mr. Alex anxiously, looking for any sign of improvement, any indication that her decision had not been in vain. However, what followed was not the miracle she had prayed for, but a visible worsening in her condition. His previously labored breathing became even more irregular, his face acquiring an even more marked paleness. "This is not happening," Mary whispered to herself, the reality of the situation falling over her like a heavy veil. "I just wanted to help," the nurse said as she activated the ambulance button. A few weeks before, Mary had asked Mr. Alex to install an emergency button in case she got worse. However, even in the face of her husband's deterioration, Helena turned on Mary with renewed fury. "You weren't even able to save him before he signed the documents. That's enough. You've done enough. Get out of my house now," she ordered inflexibly, and for a moment, Mary felt the weight of guilt crushing her. "I'll have the guards escort you to the door," Helena said, leaving the room with the lawyer following her. Taking advantage of the fact that she was alone with Mr. Alex in the room, Mary hid the papers that he had shown her in her robe before the man's wife returned. "Stay strong. I'll find a way to help you," he told the visibly shaken patient when one of the guards appeared entering the room. As she was escorted out by one of the house employees, Mary's head was spinning, not only from the emotional turmoil, but also from a sudden dizziness that threatened to consume her. She stumbled, feeling that each step required an enormous effort. "Hurry up," the guard murmured. "I just wanted to save him," Mary thought, before the guard pushed her, causing her to fall on the sidewalk at the entrance to the mansion. She felt weak as the world seemed to spin around her. The guard left her lying there, as if she were not important, and returned inside the house without paying attention to her. After the tense confrontation with Helena and Mr. Alex's health crisis, Mary was weak and disturbed, leaning on the grass to avoid fainting. It was in that moment of vulnerability that the house's gardener appeared, offering his arm for support. "Are you okay?" His voice was soft, in contrast to his rustic appearance. "I'm fine. The one who is worse is Mr. Alex," Mary responded, recognizing the kindness in the man's eyes. As she leaned on the gardener to get up, Mary heard the distant sound of approaching sirens. The emergency ambulance, called to treat Mr. Alex, finally arrived. Initial panic gave way to fierce determination. "I need to go to the hospital," she murmured, more for herself than for the gardener. The idea of leaving Mr. Alex alone in his most critical moment was unbearable. He doesn't have anyone else. His wife doesn't care. Mary knew that Helena would not allow her to go with the ambulance team, so with slow steps she walked towards a taxi rank, fighting against the dizziness and weakness that threatened to take over her. Each step was difficult, but there had been weeks since Mary began to feel sick. However, now she had to go to Alex, and she couldn't get sick. She took a taxi, leaning on the back seat as he tried to gather his strength. Her gaze fell on his robe where she kept the unopened envelopes. "Please, my God, let there be something useful here," she prayed, her voice heavy with urgency. Moved by the desire to save her patient, she broke the seal on the envelope, ready to do anything to save Alex's life. Inside, he found something she didn't expect: a positive result of a paternity test confirming the existence of an unknown son or daughter of Mr. Alex, and a detailed examination revealing that this person suffered from the rare disease that now threatened the magnate's life. There was no name on the test, nothing that could indicate how Mary could find Alex's son. "Who will it be?" she murmured to herself, a growing unease washing over her. Upon arriving at the hospital, Mary ran towards the reception, her breathing heavy and her heart racing due to the urgency of the situation. "I need to see one of the patients." "His name is Alex," she said with a voice full of desperation. The receptionist, a woman with an impassive expression, looked at Mary with a mixture of sympathy and professional protocol. "I'm sorry, but only family members can see you at this time," he responded, maintaining the efficiency that the situation required. Mary hesitated, the moral dilemma hitting her hard. Remembering Mr. Alex's last request that she pretend to be his daughter, a risky decision took shape in her mind. With the result of the paternity test still in hand, he took a deep breath and lied. "I am his daughter. These papers prove it. I need to see it." "It's urgent," she said, holding out the document to verify her words, grateful that the proof did not specify the gender of the offspring. The receptionist took the papers, examining them briefly before nodding, allowing Mary access. "Follow me, please," he said, guiding Mary through corridors that seemed to extend infinitely. Walking behind the receptionist, Mary felt each step like an echo of her own uncertainty. "Am I doing the right thing?" she wondered internally, the weight of the decision to lie weighing on her conscience. However, the desire to be at Mr. Alex's side in his most critical moment, to keep his promise of not letting him face the darkness alone. When she finally reached the room where Mr. Alex was being treated, Mary hesitated at the door, fearing what she would find. Taking a deep breath, he entered, meeting the sight of the tycoon hooked up to several machines, each a reminder of the fragility of life. The man was intubated and appeared frail in the hospital bed. Next to him was a doctor who was writing down the patient's health status on his board. Approaching slowly with her heart clenched with pain and guilt, the nurse could barely utter a word. "Mr. Alex, it's me, Mary. I came as soon as I could," he whispered, even though he knew there would be no answer. The coldness of her hand against his made her swallow, the tycoon's words about pretending to be his daughter echoing in his mind. "I am your daughter. Can you tell me her health?" she asked the doctor, who was now looking at her carefully. Mary hated having to lie again, but it was necessary. The doctor turned his gaze to Mary, taking a deep breath before responding. "Mr. Alex is in a deep coma. Under the circumstances, it is unlikely that he will survive to the end of the day," he said, making Mary's world collapse around her, each word from the doctor echoing in a void that settled in her chest. In that moment, the reality of what between life and death meaning became painfully clear. "He can't leave like this," she thought to herself, before turning to the doctor. "I need to be alone with him, with my father," she requested, approaching the bed where Mr. Alex lay motionless, the sound of the devices filling the space between them. As soon as the doctor came out, Mary sat in the chair next to the bed. "Mr. Alex, I did not forget my promise," she began, her voice trembling with contained emotion. "I will fulfill your last wish as you asked. Today, I will be your daughter." Holding Alex's hand, Mary tearfully, If we were father and daughter, we would spend a day at the beach without illnesses that afflicted us, sharing stories and laughter. We would have a morning of strength and joy, ending the afternoon with a coffee at the sea's shore. That would be the day of our dreams." As he finished speaking, his words, full of hope and sadness, offered comfort and a glimpse of happiness. Suddenly, the door to the room was abruptly opened, breaking the silence with Helena's sudden entry. Her presence immediately filled the space with a cold and calculating energy, the magnate's wife's eyes fixed on Mary with obvious disdain. "What do you think you're doing here?" Helena demanded, her sharp voice echoing through the walls of the room. "I thought I was clear, but it seems like you have comprehension problems. You are fired." Mary stood up to face to Helena with determination. "You can't fire me. I'm his daughter," he lied, taking out the envelope with difficulty. Mary knew it was dangerous to lie to Helena, but she had no other option. Otherwise, she would have to leave the man alone with his wife, who seemed to want him dead. Helena was not surprised by the revelation or the blatant lie. In fact, she laughed disdainfully, a harsh sound that seemed out of place in this environment of life and death. "You, his daughter? That's ridiculous. Look at your appearance, your clothes." "You could never be part of our family," she said, looking disgusted. Every word of "she" was loaded with contempt that made Mary feel even smaller. But the nurse did not back down. "It doesn't matter what you think," he said, mustering the last of his strength. "I'll stay here. He's not alone." The intense discussion between the two women was interrupted by the sudden arrival of the medical team, called by Helena. "This woman is disturbing the patient's peace. I demand that it be removed immediately," Helena ordered, pointing accusingly at Mary. "Trying here." Arriving at Alex, Mary felt a strong dizziness and collapsed, murmuring her determination not to leave. As she fell, she saw Alex's fingers move, an unexpected sign of life. "It moved," she said in a weak voice. As doctors rushed to help her, Helena demanded to be ignored. "This girl is nothing more than a nuisance. He doesn't have money to pay for his services," Helena said. Those were the last words Mary heard before completely losing consciousness. Sometime later, Mary woke up in a hospital room bathed in dim light. Mary felt the urgency throbbing in her veins as she noticed the atmosphere of an expensive hospital. "I can't stay here. I can't pay for a hospital like this," she thought. With considerable effort, she ignored the vertigo and removed the accessions from his arms. Determination. A dulling the pain. She tried to sit up, but his body protested, every muscle screaming in resistance. When she turned in bed, she saw his bag along with the envelope containing Mr. Alex's exams lying on a chair. "Some nurse must have left my things here," she muttered weakly to herself. She needed to act, and every second lost was one less second that Mr. Alex had. Taking the envelope and his phone, he dialed the number of the Pharmaceutical Institute on the paper with trembling hands. His breathing was growing heavier with anticipation. The call was answered quickly, and Mary was promptly transferred to a pharmacist as soon as she mentioned Mr. Alex's name. "Dr. Enrique, Pharmaceutical Institute. Good morning." "What I can help?" said a man on the other end of the line. "Dr. Enrique, I'm Mary, Mr. Alex's nurse. He got sick and is hospitalized. I found his phone in a test he took. I don't know what to do, but I need to help him," Mary said, feeling bad but trying to keep her voice audible. "Ah, Mary, yes. I am aware of Mr. Alex's situation. I need you to stay close to him. It is vitally important that you are not alone now. We need to ensure that it is safe." "Can you do that?" he asked, increasing Mary's concern. She tried to move from the bed, but her legs were still weak. "Tell me what's happening." I need to know what I can do, he argued, fearing that his absence would have cost his patient his life. Mr. Alex is involved in a study for the cure of a rare disease, the same one that made him sick. It is a revolutionary program, but it is still in the final phase of testing. I hope the results of the study are completed today so I can continue with the program. I know I don't have time to save Alex, but I will still fight until the last second, Dr. Enrique explained, his voice conveying the seriousness of the situation. I'm going to the hospital to see him right now. Do not walk away from him under any circumstances. He ended the call hurriedly out of concern. I hope that these tests are not related to that medication that I administered to Mr. Alex. If the medicine doesn't work and he doesn't survive because of me, I will never be able to forgive myself, Mary thought, shuddering. I need to be there with him. I can't stay in this room. He concluded by getting up with difficulty. His legs were burning, but he sought strength with each determined step. Each step towards the corridor was difficult. Despite the weakness that threatened to overtake her, her determination was never stronger. I'm arriving, Mr. Alex, hold on, she whispered to herself, walking as fast as she could through the hospital corridors with Mr. Alex's documents. Please, God, leave me strong until I can reach Mr. Alex, until Dr. Enrique arrives, no matter what happens to me. Mary tremblingly prayed for the man's life. She continued walking, gaining strength to move down the rest of the corridor. Upon arriving at Mr. Alex's room, Mary was greeted by a scene of intense medical activity. Doctors and nurses surrounded the tycoon's bed, each expressing urgency and concern through their actions and fragmented conversations. Through them, he learned that Alex was in critical condition. All the doctors seemed to say something worrying. We are going to lose this patient. There is no way to save him, one of the doctors said, making Mary's chest shrink. What's going on? Mary managed to ask, her voice heavy with anxiety as she approached, ignoring the weakness that threatened to overtake her again. He showed signs of improvement a few minutes ago, but now he's gotten worse, one of the doctors explained, his voice lost among the cacophony of beeps and alerts from the monitors. We are losing it. Mary observed Mr. Alex, noticing the paleness of his skin and the obvious struggle in each breath. The sight rekindled the desperation in her heart, the fear of losing someone who, in such a short time, had become so important to her. Please do something, Mary implored the doctors, her voice choked with emotion. Don't let him die. One of the doctor's ICOs, the team leader, turned to Mary, his serious expression denoting the seriousness of the situation. Mr. Alex is in a very delicate condition. We are doing everything possible, but you need to understand. No. Mary interrupted the strength of her voice, surprising everyone, including herself. Don't tell me to understand. If there is any chance of saving him, no matter how small, they have to try, she said, but his vision started to blur again. The doctor watched her for a moment, leaving Mr. Alex and approaching her. We're trying, but we also need to take care of you. She is weakened, and he argued, but Mary interrupted him. Forget about me. The most important thing is him. I would never forgive myself if something happened because of me. He argued, with vision becoming blurry again. They can't give up on him. There is always something else you can try. Always. The doctor took the pressure device, one step away from Mary. We understand your concern, but we have to be realistic about his possibilities. The doctor spoke when she saw her leaning against the wall. Mr. Alex was already aware of his state of health. I'm sure he would want us to take care of you. The Pharmaceutical Institute is a well-known supplier. I am convinced that he would understand the situation, said. Mary tried to take a step back, raising her hand so that he could attend to Mr. Alex. Realism. He's not just a patient to me. Alex believed in me when no one else did. It gave me a reason to keep fighting. How can I abandon it now? They can't abandon it now. You took an oath, as did I, he argued, feeling weaker and weaker. However, the lack of medicine began to take its toll, and Mary felt her vision blur completely, an overwhelming weakness taking control of his body. "Please save him," she murmured, her last words before she felt the ground rapidly approaching as darkness enveloped her once more. Days later, Mary wakes up in a hospital room with difficulty. He opens his eyelids slowly, blinking against the harsh light that fills an unfamiliar room. "Oh, where am I?" What happened to Alex? She thought to herself, remembering everything that happened before she lost consciousness. Mary knew the hospital environment very well thanks to her skills as a nurse. She knew that this was not the same place where she left Alex. Without a doubt, they saw that I cannot pay for a stay in that hospital. No matter where she was, she knew he was better because his muscles no longer hurt. Mary could even get up easily. She could feel her body different than before. He felt strong, completely painless. Then she pressed the bell button to call a doctor, looking around for any hospital employees. An elegant man entered the room, and when he saw Mary awake, he gave her a huge smile. "Mary, I'm glad you woke up." "I'm Dr. Enrique," he said, approaching the bed. "I am Mr. Alex's trusted doctor and pharmacist. We talk on the phone." "Mr. Alex, how is he?" "I need to know," she asked, her voice full of concern. The man smiled reassuringly. "Everything will be explained soon. The doctor in charge is on his way to see you." Dr. Enrique tried to calm her, but Mary's anxiety only grew. "I have no way to thank you for everything you did for my friend Alex. You sacrificed your health so he could be treated." "People like you are rare, Mary," praised Dr. Enrique. However, their talk was interrupted by the entry of another doctor into the room. Mary immediately began bombarding him with questions about Mr. Alex's condition. However, the doctor only talked about her. "You are in excellent health, thanks to the medication," he said, checking the devices that indicated his heartbeat. "I have no way to pay for treatment at this hospital," Mary said, looking at the two. "I'm unemployed right now," she said, worried about her layoff. Without knowing what had happened, she hoped that Alex was fine and that he would find another nurse who would take loving care of him as she did. Dr. Enrique calmed her down. "Don't worry about the bills. The Institute will cover everything due to its exceptional care with Mr. Alex. And as for her job, come on, there's something she needs to see as soon as she's discharged." Curiosity took over Mary, but she did not want to hope for a job so quickly, especially when Helena would hardly give her a letter of recommendation. "I will find a way to solve the mess of my life." After some certification exams, Mary was finally discharged from the hospital and accompanied by Dr. Enrique to the Alex mansion. He brought me here to collect my luggage. Mary asked Enrique before facing the house that was her refuge in the moments when she needed it most. "No, there's actually someone waiting for you in there," said Dr. Enrique, smiling. "I'll come back later because I have to check how a program the Institute is working on is going." After thanking and saying goodbye, Mary approached the mansion with her face full of anxiety. However, when he opened the living room door, he was shocked to see Alex standing smiling at him. "I can't believe it," he said, his face full of joy. "Oh God, thank you," she prayed in disbelief when she saw her patient in perfect health. "Tell me how this happened," she asked as Alex walked towards her. In all the months she worked for him, Mary had not seen her patient walk completely confined to his bed due to the severity of his illness. "I can't believe what I'm seeing." "You're walking." She was happy, waiting for him to reach her, since she saw that Alex was happy to be able to walk alone. With quick steps, he came towards her and hugged her for a while, excited. "Mary, you have saved me more times than you imagine, but there is more to our story than you know," he said in a strong, imposing voice. "I couldn't tell you everything. I'm sorry." Mary took a step back, stunned by the seriousness in Alex's eyes. "Why do you seem nervous?" she thought to herself before smiling at him. "Then tell me. I have tried to understand everything that has happened, but I have many questions. Who is your son? Did you also manage to save him?" Alex took a deep breath with excited eyes directed toward Mary. "Actually, I have a daughter," he said excitedly. "I didn't know who she was until the day my health couldn't take it anymore. It took me a while to receive the results of the tests, but yes, I saved her," he said, making Mary breathe a sigh of relief before smiling at him. "I'm glad to see you in front of me, healthy and smiling at me, daughter," he finished, causing shock to cross Mary's face. She couldn't hide her surprise without believing what she heard. "What did you say?" she asked, her voice thick with emotion. "I think I didn't understand well." When she faced him, she smiled before saying, "You are my daughter, Mary. My daughter." He was happy to say the words, taking Mary in a hug. "How is that possible?" she asked, crying. "Are you referring to the request you made that I pretend to be her?" "Mary," he asked, hoping this wasn't a joke since his biggest dream was to have a family. Alex smiled, but it was a sad smile. "You are my daughter, Mary. I asked you to pretend because I thought I would die. I didn't want you to suffer and gain a father and then lose him. I discovered that you spent your life in an orphanage, dreaming of finding your father. I couldn't reveal the truth to you on the day I was going to die, given the circumstances. I'm sorry for hiding it." Mary struggled to process the revelation, Alex's every word unearthing deep emotions she never knew she had. "And my mother?" she asked, feeling tears welling in her eyes. "That did it happen to you? How did you not know you were my father?" When he faced her, he lowered his gaze, indicating that he was saddened by thinking about the topic. "Your mother, unfortunately, did not love me. We were married, but she was never happy with me. She left without saying goodbye to live with another man. I didn't know that when she ran away, she was pregnant with you. If Mary had known, everything would have been different for both of us. She left you in an orphanage as soon as you were born, but her life didn't last long after that." He paused as Mary began to cry. "I also wish everything was different," Mary said, sad for her mother's story and for what was taken from her. He had a father, a real father. With measured steps, Alex approached his daughter, taking her in a hug. "I'll finally have a family. I have to thank God every minute for the gift I received." He paused, but Mary had many questions. "How did you find out?" Alex became serious due to the seriousness of what he was going to say. "Helena, knowing that I was sick, began to investigate to find out if there would be someone with whom I would have to share my inheritance. However, she didn't tell me about your existence, but during a crisis I went to get some medicine and saw your photo. I immediately knew that you could be my daughter because you have the face of your mother when she was your age. So I asked a researcher to look for you, and when he found you I was still not sure if we were related. So I hired you because I was afraid that you would have the same illness and would be left alone. Helena didn't want to hire you because she had to, being afraid that he would discover the truth and hid everything from me. It took me a while to accept that she would do something like that. I thought he had lied to protect me in case he wasn't your father. But I saw that she wanted you to be fired at all times, and I didn't allow her to do that to you while I was waiting for the exam results to come out. I hadn't realized that you were already sick too, because you hid your pain to take care of me." I paused, crying with emotion. Mary looked at the ground, ashamed. "I didn't want you to worry about me," she said, embarrassed. "You are an angel in my life, Mary. But I always want to know everything about you. But going back to what happened, I asked that my medical team look for the cure to save you, in case of that you would get sick. With that, I asked them to find the cure before worrying about the paternity test because it wasn't important. I already had you like a daughter." "I also had you like family," Mary said, smiling. "I took care of him like I would if I knew he was my father," she thought. He remembered every day that she took loving care of him, happy to be able to be useful to him. Alex's face turned. He looked serious as he revealed everything to his daughter. "When the result came out, I no longer had time to tell you about the DNA without hurting you for losing me next. Furthermore, the tests revealed that Helena was drugging me so that I would get worse, and she would keep my inheritance." Alex wiped away his tears, trying to compose himself in the face of the shocking revelation. "The discovery about Helena devastated me, but it strengthened my determination to protect you, my only true heir." Mary, still processing the avalanche of information, felt a mix of emotions: relief at finally understanding her origin, but also anger and sadness at Helena's conspiracy. And now, what are we going to do with Helena? Alex looked at Mary firmly, a flame of resolution in his eyes. "Dr. Enrique collected samples of my blood while I was recovering in the hospital so we could see what Helena did. Her lawyers were ready for me to sign the will, and she would keep my fortune. While you were in the hospital, she was arrested. Now justice has been done, and Helena will not go unpunished for her actions. But what about your illness, the cure?" Alex smiled slightly, a glimmer of hope crossing his features. "Our medical team achieved the cure. The medication you gave me was being tested as part of that effort. Thank God he saved you. I knew that in my condition there would not be time for the cure to work, but by giving me the medicine, you also saved me and my daughter. We are cured, Mary. We have a whole life ahead of us." Mary felt a wave of relief and joy. "This is incredible. So is there hope for both of us?" she asked, smiling through tears. "Yes. I even booked our tickets for when you left the hospital," Alex responded, smiling at him. "What? Could you hear me while you were in a coma?" Mary asked excitedly. "Yes, my daughter. I will do everything so that we can have our special day on the beach and many others after that," Alex responded affectionately. Mary felt gratitude and love shining in her eyes. "Thank you, Dad, for everything," he said. Alex, father and daughter, worked together to not only strengthen their newfound family bond, but also to confront the legal challenges imposed by Helena. Justice prevailed, and Helena found herself behind bars paying for her nefarious attempts to usurp Alex's inheritance and endanger his health. His health noticeably improved thanks to the medical innovation his own company helped develop, fulfilled the promise he had made to Mary. Father and daughter spent an unforgettable day on the beach, celebrating not only Alex's recovery, but also the new life ahead of them. It was a day of laughter, deep conversations, and planning for the future, marking the beginning of many other special moments they would share as father and daughter. Mary, in turn, assumed a new role at the Alex Pharmaceutical Institute. With her experience as a nurse, she began to conduct training so that other nurses could recognize signs of abuse in the family environment that could go beyond physical marks. Mary's teachings helped many professionals become more attentive and effective in identifying patients who were suffering in silence, transforming them into stronger advocates for the vulnerable. This new approach not only raised the Institute's profile in the health field, but also positioned Mary as a key figure in the fight against domestic abuse and neglect, using her painful personal experience as a driving force for change. Alex, now more recovered and inspired by his daughter's resilience and compassion, dedicated a significant portion of the Institute's resources to supporting this cause, establishing awareness programs and alliances with organizations dedicated to the protection of patients' rights. Under the leadership of Mary and Dr. Enrique, the Institute also began developing new policies to ensure that patients received care in a safe and welcoming environment, setting a new standard of care across the sector. Mary's work soon gained recognition beyond the Institute's walls, with invitations to speak at health and wellness conferences and events, where she shared not only her professional findings, but also her personal story, touching the hearts of many and inspiring others to join his cause. As father and daughter, Mary and Alex rebuilt their lives with mutual respect, admiration, and a love that surpassed the trials of the past. They found joy in the little things, celebrating every victory together. If you liked this story, we invite you to like and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to continue bringing exciting stories almost every day.